You bought it. You broke it. How are you going to fix it? On today's Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. Hi there. My name is Charles Ray Dawson. I am the Associate Broker Residential Sales Manager of ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 220. I hope you guys are having a good day. So if you caught that on the screen, yeah, I'm drinking McDonald's coffee, and you can tell I'm having a day when I'm having breakfast at McDonald's, which is tasty and good, but also so bad for you. Anyways, so let's see. What do we got going on this week? You can tell I really didn't do a lot of prep on this one. Actually, I did prep. I just didn't do the national and local news prep like I usually like to do right now. Did hit Crop Report, pulled the numbers off of that, got my own numbers and everything, and just wanted to lead into this idea of the rest of the episode. But nationally, we're still trying to figure out what's going on with experts in one field who feel they can pontificate in another field. Drive me nuts. All right. Many of my longtime viewers and fans have heard me rant on many occasions of people who need to stay the frick in their lane. All right. But one of my economists were talking about our upcoming housing crisis, and it's because of tariffs, and apparently we import incomplete houses and IKEA packages from China, and how can we possibly solve our housing issue if we have this issue tariffs going on. And as I've been reporting, and as we pointed out, most of our builders here in town are well situated to supply these things locally, and they have the stock on hand, where tariffs over negotiations and stuff like that isn't really going to impact our housing market. In fact, with as you see by the numbers, supply is not our problem. Now, that being said, we can take a really good look at what's going on with the interest rates and everything, and how the 10-year Treasury has just been hammered by various sources unknown who feel the intense need to sell those things off. All right, and market being as the market is, we'll see how that works out for them. But as things are right now, demand is actually increasing, not as fast as supply. So I'm sitting there and I'm setting up these numbers and everything like that, and I'm going to show you the chart that just depressed me this morning, and I'll explain to you why it depressed me. And then we're going to wrap up with a little story of one of my clients and how that turned into the rest of our episode. So let's start with the numbers and get that out of the way, because I know you guys just, you don't live for it as much as I do, but I'm a numbers guy. So these are the numbers for April 24th, 2025. Actives this week are 26,183, up 37 from the previous week, 137 from the previous week. Sorry about that. It was much more. And actually, that number is completely incorrect. Wait one. See, I told you that number was wrong. It's actually 317, not 37. Okay, so we're up 317 from the previous week. New listings were 2,407, down 315. Uh-oh. Why is actives going up if less is going into the bucket? Well, because we are looking at contracts being 2,339, down 191, giving us closings of 1,641 closings last week, and coming soon to an MLS near you is 686. Now, for the fun numbers, Crop Report, supply is at 105% of where we should be based on our population. Our demand did rise, coming up to 82.1. All right, but that gives us a Crop Report number of 78.1, still falling. What's going on, boys and girls? Well, basically, these contracts are dropping. Less people, we are hit the peak, and now the buyers are pretty much, if they're going to buy, they're pretty much all in the game right now, and we're going to start seeing this back off more and more, unless we get that interest rate bump we've been waiting for. So let's look at the local areas. Okay, did I even bother to replace this? Like I said, it's a morning for me. Nope, those are April 7th. Yep, those are the right ones. Okay, so Chandler's leading the pack right now at 133.1, but even they've dropped 5%. Avondale and Glendale. Avondale up 10% over last month. They're at 121.8. Glendale's at 114.5, up 4. All right? Moving strongly into seller territory. Then we got Fountain Hills, Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Paradise Valley. Look at Scottsdale and Paradise Valley at 113 each. All right. Gilbert is now we're starting getting into the balance market at Gilbert at 108, down 8% from, so they are return. Mesa, you don't see 100 that often, right? But that Mesa is currently a perfectly balanced market, right? And they had to drop 5% to get there. Tempe, down 17%. What? Tempe, you are, I've dated girls like Tempe. It's like mood swings all over the place, right? But Cave Creek, Peoria, Goodyear, Surprises up 4, Queen Creek, and there's Buckeye and Maricopa. Remember, we were thinking Maricopa was going to pass Buckeye, then Buckeye surged. They do not want to be the lowest ranking neighborhood. And there's Maricopa, just broke over the 50 point, and now they're sitting there at 51, and they were up 3. So once again, if you're looking for the deals, you're looking at Maricopa and Buckeye, Queen Creek, and Surprise. Just make sure you're going to be there for a couple of years, because you're going to see their prices starting to drop. You're catching a falling knife if you're going out there, but you're going to be sitting pretty if you stay there for other 5 years. All right, so let's see what else we got going on. This chart, this is a chart that depressed me this morning, all right? And it looks really optimistic, all right? These are the listings under contract, all right? Right now we have 7,826 listings currently under contract. Normally I do not track those in my on my own personal chart, right? But that's how many that are currently under contract in escrow, waiting for the lender, waiting for the home inspection, whatever. And we were slightly above last year, all right? We had a really good April compared to last year, all right, where we were up like almost 500 closing a day, all right? So we're sitting pretty good, all right? We started off a little bit less than last year, and you can see right here, you know, we're red in 2025. This purple one is 2024. All right. So we start off a little bit slower than last year. All right. Then we cross over around week 8, week 9. All right. Trend just along with, and then whatever, I can't remember what happened last year to knock that down. Might have been an interest rate spike or something like that. But then here we are. The reason why I'm depressed is because reading this chart reminds me that the first week of May is historically our top end of listings under contract, meaning that's when the big surge of buyers have already come in. All right, so this is why I always try and explain to people, you want to list on May or January 1st. January 1st is when you want to go. If for some reason you have a life event that's going on January 15th, you want to list on January 16th. Well, let's just say somebody I've been talking to about this for like literally the last 3 years as getting ready to list her place. And it'll be going on the market right here, right at the top of the market. Because these are the contracts that happen afterwards. This is your power band. This is your long slog into depression. So that deserves a cup of coffee. I'm just strongly discussing getting Bailey's around here to add to our coffee, and I think we're going to need it probably by about June. So what does this mean to you guys? Okay, if you are still interested in buying a house, it will start getting better to be a buyer if you're just getting on board, right? Because those people who are listing, let's say next week, or have been listed over the last month and missed their big window, right, that first weekend where everything needs to be perfect, all right, the sellers are going to start feeling more, feeling the strain more and more as the year goes on, all right? So if you were a seller, you really should have listed, second week of January, all right? But we'll see what we can do. So I'm not saying that houses don't sell. Houses will sell. You're just going to have less of an experience. One of those, mean to say, it's like, for a guy who doesn't want to teach the newbie classes, I'm always getting notes from the broker about things to teach. And one of which was this article saying that sellers are increasingly giving concessions to buyers. All right, that's what happens when you're in the buyer's market. The seller has to start giving up more stuff than they wanted to. They're going to start giving up, closing costs. They're going to have to start agreeing to more things on the Binzer when the buyer comes in with their punch list of things that they'd like to see repaired or replaced. Right? You got to be a little bit more forthcoming, right? You're not holding any cards. Let's just say you're looking at being Ukraine, all right, where the best you can do is die slowly. All right, so the as you're on the buyer's side, you're swinging around with this big buyer energy, and you're coming in and you're not offering listing price anymore, and you're looking at a full concession package, and you want the home warranty thrown in. And on the seller, you're going to be looking at everything on the other side, like, is my house ready to go from day one? Case in point, one of my agents here has been having some drama this week, right? And I'm going to tell you exactly where he screwed up. All right. Got a buyer, FHA, using that first-time home buyer package I was telling you about, all right, where the buyer does not need to come up with a lot of money to buy a house, all right? This is a great deal if you're the buyer. Get a house under contract. Decide they don't want that house in the Binzer, even though that was a very nice home inspection from a experienced eye looking at hundreds of home inspections by now. Yeah, that's not a bad house. Couple things of concern, all right, but they're completely workable. Anyways, for some reason, his particular buyers just wigged out and went, "Oh no, we don't want this house." So they they get another house under contract after canceling out of the first one. Buyers can be choosy right now, right? They go for this other house, lower price, 900 square feet more, much worse condition. Now, when you're using an FHA or a VA loan, your FHA or your VA loan, that appraiser is going to be coming there, not just looking at the value of the house. He's also going to be making notes about FHA and VA will not lend money. Actually, they won't insure the money the lender is lending on this house because of these conditions. Right? They can be stuff like leaks, evidence of leaks, security doors on the windows, these kind of things, whatever it is, right? So when you are on the agent side and you're looking at these houses, all right, if you're on the seller side, you're looking at it with the seller going, "Hey, seller, 60% of the sales out there are FHA or VA. These are things you need to repair, or we're going to see them on the Binzer. And if we don't see them on the Binzer, we're sure as hell going to see them on the appraisal. So let's get them done now." Right. And if you're on the buyer side and you're touring a house and you decide to write an offer, you need to be looking at that house as with the experienced eye of, "Hey, an appraiser is going to call this out. This is going to be drama. All right. Oh, look, this is going on over here." And then once the home inspection is done, and I always call up the home inspector and go, "Hey, Steve, Inspector Steve, inspect the best, great guy. Steve, this is an FHA loan. I need to make sure that you keep an eye out for anything that might spike on an FHA appraisal." And he goes, "Yeah, sure, Ray." And then we go through those things. So once the inspection is done and you send that Binzer over, all right, you want to call out everything you found on that inspection that you think is going to spike on the appraisal, right? Because that appraiser is going to come in and, yeah, all right, they might not see it. They might not see it. And, but the odds are they will, okay? The high odds bet is to get it done by the seller before the appraiser gets it. All right. If wishes were fishes. All right. So my agent sends the bins over, calls out the things that he thinks is going to be spiked by a home inspector. And guess what? Or the appraiser. And the seller comes back with a counter. "Okay, we'll give you closing costs." Now, he took the eyes off the price. The reason why you need to call those things out is not because the buyer wants them, it's because the appraiser is going to want them. So after negotiations, they decided to negotiate a certain amount of money to go to the buyer, closing costs, all right, paid for by seller for buyer's benefit in lieu of repairs. That still left the problem. So sure enough, the appraiser comes in and he goes, "Whoa, hey, okay." And he sends over an appraisal that has probably the most things I've ever seen on a home appraisal. All right. And why? Because none of them got addressed. Well, the seller thinks he got them addressed. And see, that's where the disconnect happens. The loan's not happening. The loan is not going to happen unless those things are fixed. This is not a matter of negotiation. This is the federal government, and the federal government gives no. All right. They are cold, heartless bureaucrats who have no interest in humanity. They're just waiting to fill their TPS report, do their 30 years, and retire. All right. And they're going to inflict those standards upon you, plebe. All right. So this needs to get fixed. What in the seller's mind? All right. And one of the things about negotiation is it behooves you to try to put yourself in the seller's mindset or the other side's mindset. What are they seeing? What are they thinking? Where's their pain points? What is it they desire? The seller desires money, and you're taking his money away. The seller has already agreed, yes, that's a problem. Here, I am paying you money to fix it. Go away. He's resolved that issue in his head. So now you're coming back to him and saying, oh, we still need those things repaired, but I gave you money. Now, don't come back with, oh, I think we need these things repaired, and not offer to give the money back. All right? So that is one of the joys of this process. So however it happens, things get repaired, you decide to settle on closing costs, whatever, you get the house, keys are in your hand, you have bought this house. And now you don't have a landlord to come fix stuff. So what happens if 2 weeks after you buy the house, and kids use the hall shower for the first time because they've been at their dad's place while you've been moving in and everything, and the shower's making a whistling sound. All right, well, first thing you do, you call Ray, or you text Ray if you're a texter. I prefer phone calls. All right, and you explain to him what's going on, and Ray will turn around and say on TV, this is what's going on, do this. All right, you might ask, well, should I call the home warranty company? I'm like, yeah, you can. They're going to charge you a $75 service charge to come out there and do something that you told you to do. They'll take you all of 5 minutes. And if $75 for 5 minutes of your time is worth it to you, go for it. And then my next question is, if you can make more than $75 in 5 minutes of your time, why the hell did we buy that house out in Peoria? Why weren't we like down in Arcadia or Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, where the rich people live? Don't care. And so, it's just one of those things. Then, so I sit there and I say, this is what you do. You can call a plumber. You can do this. You can do that. Or you can just go grab yourself a crescent wrench. All right, pop the shower head off. Run the shower with the shower head off. Look into that shower head, and there's going to be a little white disc. All right, and in very fine print on that. And sometimes you have to throw it in a fire and then pull it out with tongs and look at it. All right, but you'll see this writing on there in this little white disc. It says, per California suck mandates. All right. And what that is that's a little water regulator disc that is in there so they can sell their shower heads in California that restricts the water flow. It's just another example of California trying to make everybody's lives more miserable through the other 49 states. All right. You take that little plastic disc and you throw it away, just like you throw away California. Go join China. We don't care. All right. And with the water running, you turn the water off and then you screw that shower head back on. Run the water. The whistling 99 times out of 100 will stop. Because the whistling is caused by air in the pipes. Air in the pipes are there because when they replaced that shower head, and they replaced everything when they flipped that house, right, they didn't do that when they installed the shower head. They just slammed the shower head on, walked off, which is what you get when you buy a flip. So this is an easy peasy fix. Now, I realize that a lot of people first-time home buyers, and a lot of people who aren't first-time home buyers, this might be their second or third home, but they've always had like a spouse or somebody in the house to do repairs for them. Or dad lived in the city and he just come out and fix stuff, whatever the problem is. You might suddenly need to learn how, to deal with things. So that's what this little, okay, look, training aid. These are the levels of homeowner repair. This is directly tied into whatever you feel your skill set is. All right. A lot of people get upset because they overestimate their skill level. A lot of people waste a lot of money because they underestimate their skill level. All right. Let's take a look at it. Simple homeowner repair stuff. That's changing a light bulb. That might be something like I just described to you. Okay. Taking a shower head off, resetting it. In a toilet, if your toilet starts running, that is a $25 part you get at Ace Hardware. You screw the old one out, you screw the new one in. All right, it's pretty self-explanatory. There are certain things that you might consider a handyman project, all right, and that I call that like phase 2 stuff, right? Phase 2, where you need somebody who actually might need to know how to sweat copper, all right, or something along the lines. Sometimes you're hiring the handyman. You're not hiring the handyman. You're hiring his tool belt because he's got all the really cool tools that you don't have. I made the mistake once of calling out a handyman once to fix one of my sprinkler systems. The valve was stuck open. And he came out and he looked at it and said, he was doing some other stuff. And he looked at it and said, I could charge you for this, but I'd have to charge you about $100, and that's a $20 part. Why don't you just go take care of it yourself? I'm like, oh, really? What part do I need? Oh, you just need a new solenoid. All right, great. 8 hours later, I wish I had actually hired him. All right. That's a really classic example of it was outside of my skill set. All right. Worked for about 2 years and then it quit working again. Go figure. Anyways, so those are the kind of things where, you start bringing the handyman who actually knows what he's doing. And then you get the expert stuff. This is your plumbing. All right. Technically, you can install your own hot water heater. Not suggested. All right. But it's those expert things. Okay. Anything that has to deal with electricity. You're talking to a guy who almost electrocuted himself trying to fix under cabinet lights once. All right. And there's a plug into the wall. Had these little stickies. You pull the peel off. You stick it underneath there. It looked great except for these cords dangling down. So I grabbed my handy dandy, staple gun, and I'm sitting there laying on the kitchen counter underneath this thing, stapling this cord into place, and I stapled through one of the cords. Don't do that, kids. But what's your skill set and what kind of tools you have? And I used to give these out as housewarming gifts, right? But I want to show you something. Right? For $100, you can go on Amazon and you can get this set right here. Okay. I'm not going to tell you what set it is. They're not paying me to sponsor them. I'm just using this as an example. All right. And I want you to note a few things that I'd almost consider a requirement if you are going to buy one of these kits. And this one is actually missing one of them, although it is a pretty solid kit. All right. You have a hammer, kitchen shears. Got a ratchet right here. You got the sockets for the ratchet that will help you undo nuts and bolts kind of stuff. You got a pair of channel locks. Okay, see, Dad, I remember what channel locks are. All right. Measuring tape, little fasteners, level, box cutters, all sorts of great and wonderful things. All right. Down here, these are wire strippers. That will actually get you in trouble. I wouldn't touch those unless you know what to do with them. All right. This is a pretty basic set. All right. Right here, okay, is the crescent wrench. Okay. And the crescent wrench is, you could also use the channel locks, all right, to get that shower head off. But you need one of these two sets. I personally prefer, using a crescent wrench over channel locks because I don't have the grip strength a lot of time. That's just me. I got small hands. All right. Thought that just popped in my head is edited for content. All right. So anyways, continue to, here's your Allen wrenches so you can put your IKEA furniture back together. All right. Your drills. Got everything you need. All right. $100, you need something like this. What you don't need, and I'm talking specifically to the ladies. Ladies, let me tell you what you don't need in your life. You don't need this crap. All right. This is actually advertised at Amazon. It's like $30 as women's tool set. Now, I picked a baby blue color, but they also do pink, purple, whatever your personal magical aura shade is, right? Let me tell you what this doesn't have and why this really, really screws you up. One, it doesn't have the channel lock, so it's probably great because hopefully your grip strength is less than mine. Some of you ladies, what the hell? All right. It's got a little electric screwdriver. All right. But it doesn't have a ratchet, although it has sockets. What it does have, has this little hoo-yah right here that supposedly you put onto the power drill, and then you use the sockets, and that's just not going to work well if you're trying to get into a tight little area. All right, because every time you need to undo a nut or bolt, it's always going to be behind something. All right, trying to get behind something with this power drill, you're going to have a bad time. All right. This is the main reason why I don't like this, is this hammer right here. All right, that is a very short-handled hammer. All right, take a look at this one. See how the length? It's all in the length, ladies. Let me tell you what, because that means you're going to get now, it's going to be a lot more accurate. All right, you're going to be a lot more accurate at that, but you're not going to get any real hammering potential with that. All right, as opposed to this critter over here. All right, because it's the leverage you're looking for. That's all the reason why I'm not really a huge fan, right, of this adjustable wrench right here. And the reason why I'm not a huge fan of that wrench right there is because it's also got a really short handle. And when you have no grip strength like me and very thin little forearms, all right, leverage is your best friend. Okay, the longer the handle, the more leverage you get on a frozen nut, frozen bolt, frozen anything, all right, to get that sucker to pop off. So, get the good tool set. You know, and these are really excellent starter sets. Think of them as like that kitchen set that you just bought for your first house or apartment that has like one of everything, but they're always really cheap and they're not great. All right, then you start filling in with the good stuff. So, the wrenches, anything, maybe a nice set of box wrenches. Okay, would also work really well. Anyways, so. Where am I going with all of this once you get to that? All right. So the next step, when you're all said and done, is go to open up YouTube and type in what's happening. My shower is whistling. And you will have 5 or 6 videos instantly pop up of handy men, handy women, handy people doing videos of how to fix these things. You'll have it, you know, garbage disposal goes out. You can actually do your own garbage disposal. The instructions will be there, including how to make sure that it's pitched in the right direction. Right? These are all basic, you know, skill sets that every homeowner should have. And, you know, full disclosure, I come from a family of prophets, not of carpenters. All right. I'm not considered, you know, I would not consider myself a particularly handy person around the house, although I do know how to get things done. All right. And this silly little Leatherman that I have in my hand, I probably pull out about every other day just to do stuff with, right? A lot of times it's just tightening screws. I've actually been, I was in a museum once, went to the bathroom. Okay, and it was one of those little houses that had been converted to a museum. Went to the bathroom, opened up the door on the inside, you know, to leave, and I realized that the doorknob was loose. And sooner or later, it was going to lock somebody in. So I just whipped out my Leatherman, fixed it. I've done that in the middle of home inspections. All right, home inspector calls something out. I look at it, and buyer shows some concern. Well, how do you fix it? I say, oh, you just fix it just like this. And then I fix it, and I turn to the home inspector and said, okay, you take that off the punch list now. So these are the kind of things. A lot of these skill sets. It will save you time. It will save you money. It will save you frustration. And that comes up to my very last thing on this. I see so much deferred maintenance on a house. So much deferred maintenance on a house. Things that just were let go for way too long until they became a problem. Right? I probably spend every weekend somewhere between 3 to 4. Well, 2 to 3, sometimes 4 if I got the time, hours on my house. All right. Yard, mostly it's been the yard lately, swapping out the filters in the spring, cleaning the grills, that kind of stuff. I mean, this is just stuff that it's, congratulations, you own a home, all right? You need to maintain or take care of it, right? Because when you do eventually come around to sell, and then we're sitting there trying to get that house ready to go, and you got a punch list of things you need to get done before we can put the sign up, well, next thing you know, you're listing your house on May 1st instead of January 16th. So, if you don't have the skill sets, learn the skill sets. If you can't learn them, marry somebody who does, or get a good handyman and have them come over constantly and just fix those little nickel and dime things, right? You can sinks, plumbing, watching children, pets around the water, all right? He won't drive in anything flooded out on your place, right? And if he's good at it, he's working his circles every day, right? He probably calls his mother. Oh, wait. My handyman's mother passed away 2 weeks ago, so I actually feel sort of bad about that. So I wasn't, well, he's probably talking to her a lot more than he used to. All right. Hope he has a good weekend, and I hope you guys do too. I'll talk to you guys later.